Welcome to Moonlit English Stories. Today's story is called The Empty Chair. As you listen, try to improve your English vocabulary and listening skills. Every Sunday at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, an elderly man named Mr. Harris walked into the same restaurant. The restaurant was small and quiet. It stood on a corner street where most people knew one another by name. Some customers came for the food, while others simply came because the place felt warm and welcoming. Mr. Harris had been coming there for years. The staff knew him well. As soon as he entered, he would smile politely, greet the workers, and walk towards a table near the window. But there was one thing about him everyone noticed. He always asked for a table with 2 chairs. One chair was for him and the other one remained empty. At first, nobody thought much about it. People assumed he was waiting for someone. Perhaps a friend was running late, or a family member planned to join him later. But as weeks turned into months, and months turned into years, the second chair remained empty. Every single Sunday without fail, Mr. Harris would sit down, place his hat on the table and look out the window while waiting for his meal. Sometimes he ordered 2 cups of tea, sometimes he ordered 2 slices of cake. Yet no one ever sat across from him. The chair remained untouched. The restaurant staff often talked about it among themselves. "Do you think he's waiting for someone?" one waitress asked. "I don't know," another replied. "But whoever it is has kept him waiting for a very long time." Despite their curiosity, nobody wanted to ask him directly. Mr. Harris was kind and respectful, and they didn't want to make him uncomfortable. So the mystery remained unsolved. Then one afternoon, a new waitress named Sophie started working at the restaurant. Unlike the others, Sophie was naturally curious. On her 3rd Sunday at work, she noticed Mr. Harris sitting alone at his usual table. 1 chair occupied. 1 chair empty. She carried his tea to the table and smiled. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harris." "Good afternoon, Sophie." As she placed the cup in front of him, she glanced at the empty chair. Then she hesitated. "May I ask you something?" Mr. Harris looked up and smiled. "Of course." Sophie gently pointed to the chair. "Why do you always keep that seat empty?" For a moment Mr. Harris was silent. His eyes moved toward the chair and a soft smile appeared on his face. It wasn't a sad smile. It was the kind of smile people wear when they are remembering something precious. Then he looked back at Sophie. "Maybe one day I'll tell you." Sophie laughed softly. "That's not really an answer." Mr. Harris agreed with a chuckle. "I suppose it isn't." But that was all he said. And somehow, the only mystery became more interesting. Over the next few weeks, Sophie found herself thinking about Mr. Harris more often than she expected. Every Sunday, he arrived at exactly the same time and the chair across from him remained empty. The strange thing was that he never looked lonely. He didn't sit there with sadness in his eyes, waiting for someone who never came. Instead, he seemed peaceful. Sometimes he would smile to himself while drinking his tea. Other times, he would gaze out the window as if he were watching an old memory play in his mind. One Sunday afternoon, the restaurant was unusually quiet. Only a few customers were at the tables. Sophie brought Mr. Harris's tea and noticed an old photograph lying beside his plate. She wasn't trying to be nosy, but the picture immediately caught her attention. In the photograph, a much younger Mr. Harris stood beside a woman with bright eyes and a warm smile. Both of them looked incredibly happy. Before Sophie could stop herself, she asked, "Is that your wife?" Mr. Harris looked down at the photograph and his expression softened. Yes, he replied quietly. Sophie felt a rush of guilt and immediately apologized. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked. It's all right, he said. I don't mind talking about her. He picked up the photograph carefully, almost as if it were made of glass. Her name was Margaret. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Sophie glanced at the empty chair. Something clicked in her mind. The photograph, the second cup of tea, the empty seat. Suddenly, she wasn't curious anymore. She thought she understood. Mr. Harris noticed the change in her expression and smiled gently. You figured it out, haven't you? Sophie nodded. A little. Mr. Harris looked at the chair across from him. Margaret and I came here every Sunday for 43 years. Sophie's eyes widened. 43 years? He nodded. Every Sunday after church. No matter how busy life became, we always made time for lunch together. A smile appeared on his face as he remembered. It started when we were young and had almost no money. Back then, we shared one meal because we couldn't afford two. Sophie laughed softly. And you kept coming all those years? He looked out the window. When Margaret passed away, I couldn't bring myself to stop. The restaurant suddenly felt quiet. Sophie didn't know what to say. She had expected sadness. But there was something beautiful about the way he spoke about his wife. The love was still there. As strong as ever. I know the chair is empty, Mr. Harris continued. I'm not pretending she's coming back. He rested his hand gently on the table. But when I sit here, I remember her laugh. I remember our conversations. I remember the life we built together. His eyes shone with emotion. And for a little while, it feels like she's still part of my Sunday. Sophie felt a lump form in her throat. For years, everyone in the restaurant had wondered about the empty chair. The truth was far simpler and far more touching than any of them had imagined. From that day forward, nobody asked about the chair again. They simply made sure it was always there when Mr. Harris arrived. Exactly where it belonged. For several months, nothing changed. Every Sunday, Mr. Harris arrived at 2 o'clock and the staff greeted him with smiles. The chair had become part of the restaurant. Customers who visited regularly knew its story. Some would glance at it and smile. Others would quietly leave flowers on the table before they left. Mr. Harris always seemed touched by the gesture. Life continued peacefully. Then one Sunday, Mr. Harris didn't come. At first nobody worried. They thought perhaps he wasn't feeling well. Perhaps he had an appointment. After all, everyone misses a day now and then. But the following Sunday, he didn't come again. Neither did he come the Sunday after that. The staff began to feel uneasy. Sophie found herself looking toward the door every few minutes, expecting to see his familiar smile. But the door never opened. The chair remained empty. For the first time, both chairs were empty. One rainy afternoon, nearly a month after Mr. Harris's last visit, a young woman entered the restaurant. She looked around the room before walking directly toward Sophie. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Did an elderly man named Mr. Harris used to come here every Sunday?" Sophie's heart sank. "Yes," she replied. "Do you know him?" The woman nodded. "He was my grandfather." For a moment, Sophie couldn't speak. A feeling deep inside her told her what's coming next. The young woman's eyes filled with tears. "My grandfather passed away 3 weeks ago." The restaurant suddenly felt still. Even though Sophie had suspected it, hearing the words hurt more than she expected. He talked about this restaurant all the time. Especially that table near the window. She pointed toward it. The table where Mr. Harris and the empty chair had spent so many Sundays together. He loved this place, she said. Sophie smiled sadly. We loved having him here. The young woman reached into her bag and removed a small photograph. It showed Mr. Harris and Margaret sitting at the very same table many years earlier. They looked completely happy. My grandfather kept this photo beside his bed, she said. Sophie looked at the picture and felt her eyes fill with tears. Some people leave behind money. Some leave behind houses. Mr. Harris had left behind something much greater. A story. A memory. A reminder of what it means to truly love someone. The following Sunday, before the restaurant opened, the staff placed a single white flower on the empty chair. No customer sat there that day. The chair remained exactly where it had always been. When customers asked about it, Sophie simply smiled and told them about a man who had spent 43 years sharing Sunday lunches with the love of his life. And even after she was gone, he never stopped making room for her. Years later, people would still remember the story of the empty chair.